What's the story behind a time when you felt secondhand embarrassment? This one girl in my class was giving a presentation on the ingénieux spelling in musical theater, and she clearly hadn't prepared sufficiently. She spent the whole 15 minutes talking about how, in real life, she was an ingénieux, and she divulged way too much personal information the guy she was into. That one of the girls in the class, exclamation mark, made a pass at her, which I don't believe was actually true. The fella she fell in love with on her year abroad, whom she cheated on and abandoned in Bulgaria, not the country they were both studying in, to fly home without saying a word. The whole presentation was a train wreck and we were all red-faced watching her. But the worst was that after class, our lecturer told us that we could follow her back to her office to get our feedback individually. This girl audibly said to the girl she claimed made a move on her, no less, that she didn't think she was going to go get the feedback. And our lecturer said, "I really think you should." She assigned her a book to read called Codependency, and she encouraged her to seek counseling. It was a wild ride. Had an interviewer come into our office for an important role, and she warned us that morning that she had been sprayed by a skunk the previous week, so she might have a teensy bit of the odor lingering. Apostrophe. Well, we got in the interview room with her, and it wasn't teensy. We were wincing, coughing, and she looks mortified, saying, oh god, it's really that bad. I've taken 100 showers. Oh no. Apostrophe. Super awkward interview. Embarrassment/anger. I invited her, now former, friend and her husband to our wedding. Dave, her husband can't make it, but because she still has the +1, she brings her cousin W. Holla chows up in denim over ab. LLS. Fine. Whatever. There. Then. Ken. During the reception. Iron. Friend decides she wants to sing me and my new husband a song. So she grabs the mic to surprise us and breaks out in Respect by Aretha Franklin. Problem is, my husband had stepped out of the ballroom, so it was just me standing there while she screamed the song in my face for 4 minutes. Tears. Dead silence following the performance. And said, "I'm still salty and cringy. NGY. I'm having third-hand embarrassment, if that's even possible." You know how there can be that one house in a neighborhood where people joke about mowing the lawn while the owner is away. One of the neighbors actually did that to us while I was 8 years old. Mom and dad had bought the place when I started kindergarten and then split up a year and a half later. The place was presentable as long as dad lived there, but mom quickly let the yard go to crap. Dad had accepted a job offer in another state with an agreement within the family that mom would sell the house and then she and I would follow. Mom put the place on the market, immediately let the curb value slide, only got lowball offers, surprise surprise, and dragged this out. Eventually she cancelled the house listing while she was waiting for the market to improve. Actually, she was pleading dad for upkeep money and pocketing as much as possible in account that was solely in her name. But that was something I didn't understand until later. What I did know as a little kid was our yard looked embarrassing. The only thing I was allowed to do about it was pull weeds. So I got out a bucket every week and pulled as many weeds from the yard as I could. Without permission, I also got out a utility broom and swept the leaves off the driveway. Mom tolerated that when she saw the results. Wasn't allowed to trim our overgrown hedges. Didn't know how to fertilize the plants. Mom tried to teach me to use the lawnmower, but it was a cheap gasoline mower with a pull string and I wasn't strong enough to start it. One afternoon Mom and I returned home, and our overgrown lawn had been mowed by an unknown neighbor. When I said something to her, she just replied, "Well, isn't that nice of them?" and sashayed to the door. I stared at it, feeling the insult, and blushed deep red, but there was nothing I could do. My best friend asking a woman when she was due. She gave birth a month before. When I worked at Chick-fil-A, I was out one morning taking orders with the iPad, and I noticed on this one woman's passenger seat was a book I had read recently. I asked, "How far along are you in that book?" Once I got the question out, she laughed and told me, and we discussed the book for a moment. But she said she thought I was going to end at, "How far along are you?" Apparently she was pregnant and didn't think she was showing that much yet, and to her credit, I certainly hadn't noticed until she told me. I feel secondhand embarrassment from characters on TV, so it can be hard for me to watch TV shows that aren't action based, because most of the conflicts are about characters being embarrassed instead of defeating evil. OMG Sonam. I can't watch Borat or Bruno or basically anything involving Sacha Baron Cohen. Same. I only managed to get through Borat over the course of around 12 sittings. I was nannying for a family at the time that had Foxtel, and after I had been through all the other movies I watched Borat. But it took me forever. It was like sucking on a really mega sour candy. I could only do it a bit at a time. Could never get through the whole thing in one go. Presentation in college. This group are up and so far so good. Everything seemed to be going as planned. Up steps the next person to speak. They're a little nervous, and they are reading from flashcards, but they are getting through it. They have a lot of interesting stuff to say. Next thing. Lecturer calls for time up, and the poor person looks mortified. Clearly talked for far too long, and wasn't aware of time. Person W Harlot was last to speak, is just giving her absolute daggers as they walk back to their SE. That's never had secondhand embarrassment that before or since. And said, I had a presentation where each 4-person group had 10 minutes to speak. Most groups broke it down as 2.5 minutes per person. One group had someone unexpectedly talk for 8 minutes and everyone else had 30 seconds to try cram in their point. It was painful to watch, and I really wish they'd have been told to shut up. I work retail, and I got called a pervert for being in the girls' underwear aisle by some crazy lady while I was on the clock and in full uniform. She went tomato red and looked like she wanted to vanish into thin air when I turned around and she saw the name tag on my chest and the company patch on my arm. No apology or anything, she just said oh, and walked away. Random crazy lady. I hope you learn not to call random people perverts in stores. And if not, I hope someone calls you a pervert in a store one day. I worked for an engineering and land surveying company. My aunt was the office manager. We were supposed to go to a company-wide 401k meeting. One of our summer hires, seasonal work, did not want to attend. I can understand why someone W Howlett is only working there for 3-6 months would not want to go. My aunt proceeded to ream this guy out for 20 minutes. Tez, ending with you just don't give a sugar about this company. Penny. I wanted to crawl under a desk. Jared Leto. I felt so uncomfortable with his Joker. Like that stupid scene with the hand tattoo and the laugh. It just made me cringe so hard I looked like a prune. Will Smith was good in that movie though. My boss accidentally kissed her work friend's dad on the lips in front of his wife and daughter, and I low-key witnessed this unfold over my cubicle wall. The work friend had her parents visiting from Europe and was giving them a tour of our office. My boss was trying to do the European cheek kiss greeting when meeting the dad, but leaned into the same side by mistake and got his mouth. It was awkward as hell, so I pretended I didn't notice to save my boss from further embarrassment. This reminds me of a time I went in to hug my step-uncle, and I think he was going in for a kiss on the cheek. He ended up kissing my neck. This happened in 2 separate instances too. After the second time I definitely went in for the hug a lot slower from then on. Funnily enough, he stopped attempting to give me a peck on the cheek. We both definitely knew it was awkward, but we never mentioned it. What are you doing, step-uncle? I was watching my buddy talk to his crush. He got a little excited during their flirtatious conversation, and when she was leaving and went to hug him goodbye, he declined BC. He didn't want to poke her with his wood. She was hurt and confused while he was pained. I loved every second. Was at a pop culture convention a very long time ago. The guest seemed a decent enough person, if a bit arrogant and artificial. The problem arose because a small part of the people in the audience were hardcore fangirls and the rest were just normies like myself. Seemed he had a large online fan base / fan site, and the hardcore fangirls were always trying to drag the topic over to conversations they'd had with him online, etc. It was that whole simulated personal relationship BS. And the rest of the audience had zero interest / connection to those conversations. This reached the zenith of cringe when it turned out that he'd offhand promised to sing a duet with one of the fangirls if they met at a convention, because she was supposedly a really great singer and had been through some tough times or whatever. The problem was that she absolutely could not sing. It was completely off key and constantly cracking and faltering, and so damn loud in this microphone. The entire audience was cringing as well as pissed that the talk was being monopolized. This went on for like 5-10 minutes of a 40-minute-ish section, and I felt very bad for the speaker because they were in a sorta impossible situation of leaving her to continue the cringy spectacle that he'd promised her, or cutting her off to save her further embarrassment. Hard to know what the correct choice was. It went on for a bit longer, but fortunately it eventually petered out and the talk moved to someone else. I was out walking my cat at night and sat down on one of the steps in my complex. My other neighbor comes out for a smoke. I smile and say hi. He lives in a building on top of a small hill. He asks who's that next to me, and I say my cat. But he didn't hear me. I kept saying it was my cat. She must have been in a shadow. He started walking closer to hear me better and he fell. Rolled down the hill and his pants fell off. I pretended like it happens every day. A teacher at my school was in a rope pulling contest as part of a fun school activity. It was teachers vs students, performed in front of the rest of the school. Said teacher was extremely strong and essentially won for the teachers despite competing against a lot of male student athletes. But he wasn't super well liked. So when all the teachers were giving celebratory high fives, he was left hanging. I accidentally asked a customer if he wanted a bag. Even Tiha Loath just told me no, and we laughed it off. And then he was like, haha, do you want a date? And I just froze up. BC, I was so embarrassed for him, BC, of how awkward it was, and just gave him his stuff and told him to have a good day. It was just unbelievably uncomfortable. Bleh. Before this year I had been asked paper or plastic when they had my reusable bag. Part of why I use self-checkout now is the stores are fine with using reusable there but still don't want you using it with the cashier. Been asked about loyalty card when they had it right in front of them. I just share the laugh and say yeah I get it automatic comment. Kind of like when on the other side and the customer says you too. You know, have a good meal or enjoy the movie or whatever. Now the date thing would be pretty awkward. Thankfully where I work, if it had escalated more than just that small comments, my job most likely would have backed me up in reacting accordingly. It's unfortunate with a lot of girls I work with we get really disturbing / uncomfortable comments, but again the management and our male co-workers have our back in those kind of situations and it's not tolerated, especially by customers. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.